Welcome to Vegan Business Talk with Katrina Fox, author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. Hello and welcome to episode 126 of Vegan Business Talk. I'm Katrina Fox, journalist, author and PR consultant and founder of Vegan Business Media, a content events and training platform providing success strategies for vegan business owners and entrepreneurs. Now, just quickly, before we jump into the main part of the show, I wanted to let you know about my online PR course and group coaching program, Vegans in the Limelight. Now, this is a 12-month online program where you have video training that teaches you everything you need to know about how to do your own PR. You can ask questions on the platform, and you can also post your proposed pitches and media releases before sending them to journalists to get my feedback. You also get to jump on a monthly live group call where you can ask whatever questions you want about your business, and you can get tailored help from me on anything to do with raising the profile of your brand. So it might be that I look at your website and give you some feedback, or how to improve your LinkedIn profile and other marketing and PR topics. So if you'd like to find out more about that, just hop on over to veganbusinessmedia.com and you'll see a link there for Vegans in the Limelight. And now on to the main part of the show. In this episode, I interviewed John Oberg, a vegan social media marketing expert and influencer in Washington, D.C. John is dedicated to making the world a kinder place for animals by utilizing the power of social media. He's the former director of new media for the international animal protection organisation, the Humane League, and prior to that, he served as director of communications for Vegan Outreach. In both these roles, John oversaw social media for the organisations, which led to a tenfold increase in following for both of them, as well as over 1 billion impressions of content posted to these pages. John recently launched his own independent project for animals through Patreon and has provided social media consulting to non-profit organisations, including Veganuary and Million Dollar Vegan. And he's now offering these services to vegan businesses and brands. In this episode, John discusses what vegan brands and businesses can do right now to organically increase followers and engagement without spending a fortune on paid ads, why scheduling tools are important and his recommendation for which one to use, when and how often you need to post on social media, how to use hashtags the right way, how to work with influencers to ensure you get the best results for your vegan brand, why you need to use live video and what types of content to share live versus pre-recorded, what type of content works best on your Instagram and Facebook feeds and what works best for stories on these platforms, and much more. Here's the interview with John Oberg. Hello, John. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Katrina. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm very excited to have you on the show. I think this is going to be a real treat for our listeners because I know you're a social media expert and it's something that vegan business owners, always need to keep on top of. So I'm really excited as well to learn from you too. So let's just kick off with the first question that I ask everyone, and that's about the why. So you've got a strong background in social media marketing. You've created some fantastic results for organizations like Vegan Outreach and the Humane League and others, and you're now consulting with other organizations, including vegan businesses. So tell us a bit about the why first, why you're doing what you're doing, and particularly in social media as an independent consultant.
Absolutely. So social media is the way that we communicate in today's world. Well, certainly there's a number of ways that we communicate, but social media is one of the most prolific by a long shot. And for that reason, it's important to put an emphasis on social media. And too many companies, businesses, individuals, organizations look at social media as a second-rate tier of communication, and they absolutely shouldn't. it is often the first place that people go when trying to learn about your business. So for that reason, I decided to go out on my own after leaving the Humane League about 6 months ago to consult with vegan businesses and organizations to get them to utilize social media, utilize the power at their fingertips, literally at their fingertips, to get the greatest amount of good and the greatest amount of return on investment.
Brilliant. I love it. I love it. And I love that there's someone from within the community doing this, because as we know, there's lots of social media marketers out there. And I think it's great to have someone with such strong expertise as yours, but also gets the issues and is passionate about them. So look, when we're talking about social media, and I know this is true for me as well, with lots of vegan business owners, and particularly, not necessarily, but particularly, I suppose, with those that are just starting out, so they haven't got many followers, and Facebook seems to be changing its algorithm. It can be hard to, stand above the crowd, even for established brands. So I'm just curious, what tips can you offer kind of right now on how to create social media posts that will get seen and also get engagement? So if we do a little example, so if we start with a service provider, so let's start with me. So you and I do a podcast, as you know, you're on it. And so obviously I'm going to promote this episode. What tips can you provide, for example, on how best to get engagement and views?
Yeah, there are a variety of things that you can do. And one of them is to essentially not feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. Look at what's working out there for your competitors and what isn't working for them, and base a strategy kind of based off of that. You might go to a competitor's or even another podcast that's totally unrelated and see what kind of content are they pushing out to their audience that seems to work and what doesn't seem to work. And when I say seems to work, I mean, is it getting good engagement? Engagement is vital. So engagement can be defined as the likes, comments, shares of your posts. And so as you want to increase your engagement, you really have to push out content out there that is actually going to succeed and give you the highest chance of that content performing well. And so for me, with this podcast, for example, I think that's something that would be most effective would be taking clips, very short clips from this podcast interview, and putting those out as video files on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Maybe making the caption just one single quote, and then encouraging people to engage with that, and ask your audience if they agree or if they disagree or what they think.
Nice. I like that. It's funny, I've only just started doing that using what's called audiograms through a really little handy tool called Headliner, where you can do exactly that. You can get the little audio clips and it turns them into video. But I like that about putting the little clips out and then asking the people what they think. So as well as saying, here's the link to the full episode, but also saying, yeah, what do you think about this? Because questions can be good to get engagement, can't they?
Absolutely. And it's, of course, important for you to get full episode downloads. And so I can understand why someone in your position would want to maybe just post the link to the thing. But the thing that's going to get the most post or engagement on social media is doing it in this way, which is why it's great to, use tools like audiograms.
Cool. And I guess that's true for a product manufacturer as well. So people who are listening and they've got products, how would you recommend that they do posts? Because obviously posts that are just like, oh, here's one of our cool products, buy it now. That's not necessarily going to work, or it might work to a degree, but not hugely. So what about someone who's in the business of making products? What kind of posts could they make to get good engagement and views?
You want authenticity. So you don't want to just post, if you make vegan cheese puffs, you don't want to just make your social media feed an endless stream of photos of vegan cheese puffs sitting in a bag on a table. You would like to look at how people who enjoy your vegan cheese puffs are posting about them. So you can find this through location tag or through hashtags, through tag posts, and you can find how your audience is talking about that, and then encourage more of that, and then work with your audience to post the things that they're posting. So if Jimmy in New York City is chilling on his couch and he's like holding up a bag of vegan cheese puffs and he's got some witty caption with it, message him and say, hey, can we use this? Is that cool? We'll tag you. And 99%
nice.
of the time they'll say yes. And that is super authentic. And also it adds a face to the product. And so it gives you more variety, and you're not going to be boring your audience by posting the same kind of stuff all the time. So that's just an example of how you can take something that might seem simple, or some might even say boring, a bag of vegan cheese puffs, but make it something interesting and something that your audience is actually going to engage with.
Good. So you should always ask permission when people do that first. You wouldn't just automatically share the post.
Yeah, that would be the best case for social media etiquette, for sure.
Got it. I actually had some fabulous vegan cheese puffs when I was in New York, and I brought them home and ate them on the airplane. So just reminded me of those. They were amazing. Great. No, that's really good advice. Thank you. So what kinds of, like sometimes on social media, there's sort of trends with like types of posts that are popular. So, memes, have been popular for a while. I don't know if they're maybe not quite as popular, but what are some of the content, the types of content at the moment which tend to be most popular on social media right now?
Videos are certainly the most popular and are always going to be the most popular. Are going to be for a very long time. So I've been doing social media professionally for the last 6 or 7 years. And over this time, I have seen more video play a more and more significant role every year. And I remember just a few years ago, I thought about this and I was like, maybe 1 out of 3 posts I see on my newsfeed are videos. And now I would say the majority of the content I see on my newsfeed are videos. And so brands and organizations and individuals who are not taking advantage of video content are really selling themselves short. They're really missing a big opportunity. And we are actually kind of lucky in the field that we're in. I'm assuming most of your audience are members of the vegan business community, or at least vegans. And so veganism is a hot topic. Animals are an issue animals are something that people care about deeply. And so we have this great opportunity at our hands to reach people with topics that they're already interested in or have opted into learning more about. If we were in the soft drink industry, we would be screwed because people don't feel very passionately about soft drinks, but people feel passionately about veganism. They feel passionately about animals. And so we should use that to our advantage. And by utilizing video, it is one of the best ways to get people to engage with your content.
Got it. So on the topic of video, what about live? How important is going live versus, say, uploading pre-recorded video to Facebook? And now LinkedIn actually has got, I think they've just introduced live. So how important is live versus pre-recorded?
Correct. Well, I do love live, but live really is significantly more limited in terms of when you can go live, when you can do it. If you're a motivational speaker and your whole social media feed is just you talking to the camera, then yes, go live all the time. But if you are somebody who's posting, photos or videos from very different things, or about things that have happened in the past, or things that are happening in the future, like you don't have quite as much freedom to live stream. But when the opportunity arises, live streaming is great. You are going to get more engagement on your live streams than you are standard video.
Oh,
so
really?
It's certainly worth doing. And the nice thing is, even if your audience doesn't tune in when it's live, they can still see it later. And so it still lives permanently on your page. And so that's pretty nice.
Got it.
I actually, and on this topic, Katrina, I have been writing a series for Plant-Based News, a 17-part series on effectively using social media to your advantage for animals. And I'm 15 parts deep. I got 2 pieces left, so it should be done within the month. But part 13 or 14 was actually specifically on live streaming for the animals. And so if anybody's interested in reading more about it, you can go to plantbasednews.org, go to the Learn section, Vegan Advocacy, and you'll see it there.
Wonderful. That's great. And so in terms of, and that's good to know about live, because I must admit, I'm not a fan of doing live. I guess because, same as being a writer, it's like I would never put a first draft of something I've written out. I like to tinker with it and edit it and sleep on it overnight and then look at it with fresh eyes and kind of things. So the idea of going live, I'm kind of, and the same with video, I like to kind of tweak it a little bit. But look, I take your point. I think I'm probably going to have to dive in at some stage.
That's the nice part about this, Katrina, is that social media absolutely needs you to be authentic if you want your posts to be successful. And so people would much rather have you stumble on your words, maybe forget what you're talking about for a second, say something stupid.
Drop the camera. Yes. Drop the phone.
Yes, yeah, any of those things. Those would be much more successful than a very well polished, overly produced video. So, and on that note, Katrina, I've got to say that I have really found one consistent thing to be successful on social media over the years, and that is authenticity or even simplicity over production.
Right.
The most overly produced, really nice quality videos or even graphics often get significantly less engagement than a video that somebody recorded on their cell phone, on their iPhone 3 8 years ago, for like 7 seconds at an animal sanctuary or something.
Right.
And so really, authenticity is what is going to breed success on social.
Okay. Now, if you're going to go live and you're going to share video, I wondered what your thoughts are on doing it from your page, your professional page. And obviously for some brands that obviously they're going to do it from their brand page, but I'm curious about whether you think business owners should also have a personal Facebook profile. Because I've got a vegan business media page. I've also got a Katrina Fox vegan journalist page. And then I've got my personal profile. And I often find I'm getting more engagement with my personal profile. So what are your thoughts on that, whether one should have a personal profile as well? And if you're going to go live and use video, is it better to directly upload it from your page and then share that on your personal profile?
It's a good question, and it's something that I kind of thought about for a long time. I thought, should I create a public page for myself? For a long time, I've only had a personal page. I created my Facebook back in, I think, 2006 or 2007, and that's I only had a personal page forever. And now, about 4 months ago, I launched a public Facebook page. And for me, I kind of went back and forth. I was like, what should I do? What should I do? And ultimately, I thought, now that I'm building my own brand, I thought that for people who don't know me personally but want to stay connected, like the work I do, want to support animals, they can connect with me on my public page, and then my personal page can be maintained for friends in real life. And one of the reasons for this is that your Facebook friend limit is at 5,000, and so you can't go on endlessly connecting with people on Facebook until the end of time. It's been a limit of 5,000 for probably 10 years now, at least. And so I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I think if you are somebody who has somewhat of a public persona, at least is getting pieces out there in the media here and there, or really wants to take their brand game to the next level, I do recommend starting a public page. And it can be more time consuming, and I really only recommend doing it if you have the resources to invest in it. I wouldn't recommend starting a public page and then posting to it twice a month. You should definitely, feed the beast. And as for what you had asked about live video, the reason you're probably finding more engagement on your personal page is because you are slightly favored in algorithm over public pages.
Okay,
With your
right.
personal page, because Facebook wants to prioritize friends and family over brands. And so we kind of have that working against us, focusing on brands. But so that's probably why you're doing that. So I think that if you're really concerned about absolutely maximizing your views and engagement of your video, I think going live on your personal page and then also sharing that live feed from your public page is the best case scenario.
Oh, okay.
But
So you can do it that way around as well. Okay. Yeah.
yes, but with the caveat that you have to keep in mind that a good number of your Facebook friends are probably not necessarily interested in whatever you're promoting via your public page. So you kind of have to accept that, a
Yeah.
number of your friends and family will also see it, and they may or may not be interested. And there's only so many times you can do that before they hide you or unfriend you or just get
True.
annoyed. So you
Yeah.
want to pick and choose carefully.
Got it. Wonderful. Excellent advice. Do you reckon, and is it worth, say you've also got a YouTube channel, so you upload your video to YouTube and then you upload directly to Facebook. Should you also bother, is it worth also putting a YouTube link on Facebook as well, or not really?
So the best strategy is always to upload video natively to every platform. You never
Right.
want to post a YouTube link as just a link to Facebook, for example. But if something that's very important to you is growing your YouTube page or getting views on that specific video, then what I would recommend doing is uploading the video or a clip from the video to Facebook, and then at the end of your caption saying, watch the full video here, and then providing a link to the YouTube page.
Okay, that's a good idea. And Facebook won't penalize you by seeing the word YouTube in your caption.
I have not found that to be the case.
Okay, cool. All right, great. No, this is great. This is really, really helpful. So, yeah, with a lot of social media platforms that are available, it can be quite hard to keep up with all of them. So I'm curious, what is your advice on how a vegan brand can decide which ones to focus on? Because we've talked about, YouTube already, Facebook, LinkedIn, there's Instagram, there's Pinterest, I'm sure there's Snapchat for others. How should you decide which ones to focus on initially, and then maybe ones to add later on?
Well, it really comes down to two things. One, which platforms fit well with your brand? And then number two, what are the resources you have at hand? If you are single-handedly running a business and you are in charge of absolutely everything, including the social media, you probably have very limited resources at your disposal. And so for that reason, you wouldn't want to launch, 8 different social media accounts, because there's no way you're going to be able to keep up with that to operate these well. But if you have more resources, like maybe you have, 20, 30, 40 hours a week, and you can pay someone to focus just on social media, then yes, you want to maximize your odds of, getting good engagement across all platforms. And so then you'd be much more open to hitting all the different pages. I think that something to keep in mind is that Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are certainly the most important. And then also YouTube does play a role if that fits well with your brand. Again, if you are a soft drink company, I don't think your YouTube presence is as important, because when's the last time you watched a TV show or a long video on YouTube about soft drinks? But if you have, if you're talking about, vegan activism, and you're documenting your journey, at Plant-Based World Expo, for example, where you and I were both last at in New York City, then yes, it'd be very relevant. And then we can't forget about LinkedIn, where it's absolutely optimal for businesses. So if you're a business page, you certainly want to be active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And then one last shout out I want to say, because this is just something that often people don't think about, is Reddit. Reddit is not a traditional social media platform, but it is as they say, the front page of the internet. And it is a way to get your content, specifically blog posts, news articles, and other kinds of media into in front of the eyes of many Reddit users. And there are lots and lots of Reddit users with very, very niche communities where you could find yourself being able to, maybe do a little bit of self-promotion, but doing so in a not so obvious way as to come off as self-promoting.
Yeah, that's what I thought about Reddit, about how often you're allowed to kind of share your own stuff. I suppose you have to sort of mix it up a bit, so you're not just sharing your own stuff, but mixing it up with other people's content as well. Would that be right?
Right. You definitely want to read up on Reddit etiquette before you start promoting anything. In fact, I would say you probably never want to come off as promoting your own thing. So, one of the nice things about Reddit is that you can, engage pretty anonymously. Many of the people are anonymous and aren't connected to, they don't have their real names on there. And so, you could promote your business via that means, as long as it's, done so in a way that isn't, really breaking too many rules of Reddit etiquette.
Got it. There's actually a good blog post on Vegan Business Media website, which is a guest post that somebody did, and they actually had a little case study of how it worked. So I'll probably put a link to that actually on the show notes page. Now, you touched on vegan business owners being busy and they may not be able to do their own social media. So how important is it for brands to create their own content and kind of do the social media themselves versus hiring someone to do it? Can you talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of the latter?
Yeah, well, the best person to do the social media is you. So if you're listening to this and, it's your business, obviously the best person to do it is you. Unfortunately, you probably have a lot of other work to do. And so somebody else has got to do it. And so for that reason, if you have the ability to hire someone who is very familiar with the brand and who is familiar with you and somebody you feel very comfortable with, talking to on a regular basis about this, that would be ideal. I'd say the worst case scenario is hiring some outside agency who is, not even in the vegan realm, because they are going to probably do the bare minimum and not have a true sense of the ethics and reasoning behind the existence of your business. Yeah. And so whenever possible, keeping it as close to home, that would be ideal.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's interesting. On one of the panels at Plant-Based World Conference and Expo that you mentioned, one of the entrepreneurs said that they'd hired someone to work with them, but she has to check kind of regularly what they're doing, or they run the content past her because there was one word, I think it was boo, like my boo, that they used, and she said, I would never say that. And so it was like little things like that where, it's kind of trying to find that balance between the authenticity and the voice. And
right.
Okay, that's great. So now, what about scheduling tools? So things like Hootsuite and Buffer, where you can, schedule a whole bunch of social media posts on all different platforms. Now, I've heard various things that some social media platforms don't show posts as much if they're shared by those tools. You kind of get penalized if you're using those tools as opposed to sharing directly to the platforms themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
I have never experienced that. I've experienced very high rates of engagement with posts that have been scheduled through these platforms, specifically Buffer.
Oh, cool.
And I pay pretty close attention to the engagement on my posts, and I have not at all seen a dip by using these tools. And even if there was a very, very slight penalty, I could see the case still being worth it because they are such a game changer in terms of freeing up your time.
Yeah.
When I first started running social media for vegan outreach back in 2013, I remember waking up every day and thinking, what am I going to post on social media? And I would think about it and be like, okay, this will go well on Facebook. And then I'd be like, all right, what am I do for Instagram? Think about it for a while and go, okay, let's do this for Instagram. Think about it for a while for Twitter. All right, let's do it there. And then a few hours later, be like, okay, I think it's time for that is not the right way to operate in 2019. We have these great tools. Buffer is awesome. I think it's really worth the investment.
Yeah.
And also, the fact that Instagram now allows companies to and businesses specifically to schedule posts, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely a changer. You can't do carousel posts, but you can do photos and videos, which is going to be the majority of your posts anyway. And so I really recommend doing this because the nice thing about it is that it's more efficient for one, and also you can use all your creativity at once. And it's funny that we talk about this because just yesterday and today were kind of my scheduling days. And so yesterday and today, I've been creating a lot of content and scheduling a lot of content for the next couple of weeks. And that really eases my life in the coming weeks to focus more on the other aspects of social media outside of posting, such as, monitoring direct messages, engaging with people in the comments section, engaging with other profiles, that sort of thing.
Got it. Really good, really helpful. And I use Buffer as well. And I found it useful now that they allow you to do the @thing with Facebook pages, which they didn't for a long time. And then they finally got it together. So yeah, I'm a fan of that as well. So, so in terms of paid reach, especially on Facebook, which we mentioned again, seems to change its algorithms left, right and center. And I've heard all sorts of stories from vegan brands where, they're finding it quite difficult to sort of master Facebook advertising. And even now, of course, we've got Instagram advertising and other social media platforms where you can pay. So how important is paid reach in getting your content seen and shared? And what tips can you offer, if any, along those lines?
So my recommendations for paid reach is to try to avoid it whenever possible. By utilizing social media and utilizing the best ways to have organic reach, you can have really significant engagement and reach without having to pay. I basically never pay for posts, and in 2019, I've had 100 million impressions of my content on my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook page.
100 million. Wow! In 2019.
In 2019, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
And this wasn't me paying Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. It was me looking at how these pages operate, how, what kinds of posts tend to perform well, how captions are written, all of that sort of thing, and really trying to optimize and utilize and be the best I possibly can be. And so whenever possible, don't pay. But there are a couple times when I think paying is acceptable. And one is if your brand or company is something that people don't really care that much about, don't feel passionately about it. Again, we go back to the soft drink example. Most people, Coke probably has to pay for lots of ads because nobody's sharing Coke posts. But luckily in this vegan business area, we have a little bit more on our side because we have people who are passionate about our products. But then secondly, if there is something that is particularly very important that you need your audience to see, then I would recommend doing it. For example, if you are a local business and you have a grand opening and you need people in the community to come to it, that could be a time when it's worth investing in ads.
Got it. No, that makes very good sense. Or if you've got a book launch perhaps or something, or you're launching a new product or something, would that be a good idea potentially as well to kind of drum up a bit of extra buzz?
Yes, especially when it's something that you don't feel like your audience is going to necessarily engage with organically.
Got it.
And if you're running the social media, you're going to know ahead of time whether or not people are really going to engage with particular posts.
Got it. Got it. Let's talk a little bit about Instagram. This is brilliant. Hashtags. So I've got quite a few questions around hashtags. You can maybe answer them in one batch, but just how important and useful are they now? How many should we use? What type should you use? Whether really popular ones or not so popular? Where should you put them? At the bottom of your caption or in the comment? And what about using them on other platforms? So let's start with Instagram. So there was a few questions there. I'll go through them again one by one, but just talk us a little bit about hashtags and their importance and how we should use them.
Absolutely. So hashtags are like the Google of social media. It is a really significant part of finding content. And so I definitely recommend using them, but I don't recommend using them blindly. They should be used in specific ways. So on Instagram, you want to use them as a first comment. So you write them in the first comment, and that way you can keep your caption looking nice and clean, and it still accomplishes the same goal. So if somebody is searching hashtag vegan business, and you have hashtag vegan business in the first comment below your post, people will still find that post.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. And speaking of Buffer now allows you to actually make add a first comment to posts, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, really?
Yes. And to go a little deeper about this, with Instagram, you can do up to 30 hashtags in a post. And so you want to hit between 25 and 30 because it's going to maximize your odds of people finding you. And if you want to get specific about what kind of hashtags you should be using, you want to use a blend of very general, widely used hashtags, more moderately used hashtags, and then very niche hashtags. So for example, this podcast, I would recommend, an example of a very general hashtag, I would say hashtag vegan or hashtag podcast. A more moderately used one, maybe in the middle, is like hashtag vegan podcast, hashtag vegan radio, hashtag vegan show. And then very specific would be like hashtag vegan business media, hashtag Katrina Fox. And so by creating this, by having a variety of different hashtags, you are actually maximizing your reach while also making it easy for people to actually find your content who are trying to find your specific content.
Nice. I like that. I was just making a couple of notes there. I like the one about vegan podcast and vegan radio and vegan show. Those are ones I haven't used. So I shall make sure I use them for this episode and beyond. What about
cool.
No, that's great. What about and I was going to ask you on Instagram, actually, what kinds of content should you post as a post on your feed versus an Instagram story?
So again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You should look at what's been working in the past, do more of that, see what doesn't work, and do less of that. And also don't be afraid to experiment. And so it depends on what your audience is engaging with. What I would guess that your audience, if you posted like a funny meme, but it's popular with 13-year-olds, it might not be something that your audience engages with, but there might be a meme account out there who would post that and their audience would eat it up. So you have to really understand what your audience wants and post that as regular new wall feed posts. But as for stories, you definitely want to incorporate stories into something you post because Instagram is becoming more and more story heavy. And so people, since they were introduced about 3 years ago, people have shifted more and more towards using Instagram stories. And so that unfortunately means that people are focusing less and less on newsfeed posts. So engagement is actually down across the board on regular Instagram
Yeah,
wallpaper.
I found that, and I wasn't sure if it was because I'd switched to a business account as well.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely found there to be a correlation with just the increase in stories. And
Right.
so
Okay.
I do recommend using stories. And to give another shout out here to my series of plant-based news, I have written a whole piece on hashtags, and I've written a whole piece on stories. So much of the things that we're talking about here, people can read about more in depthly on
Fantastic. We'll put
plant-based
a
news.
link. We'll put a link to that on the show notes page for sure. Yeah. Okay,
Cool.
cool. So, would you, for example, like I've only just started using Instagram stories, but I've read that some people, it can be quite good for showing little clips of behind the scenes at your business. So your wall is more kind of, really nice photos, or maybe more of a nice polished video, whereas the stories can be used a bit more to sort of do a quick, here we are behind the scenes making our product or whatever. Would that be right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't want to say that behind the scenes aren't good for wall photos too, because I think that they are. But I think that this kind of balance is perfect. So having people see uh, behind the scenes whenever possible, that is great. Because that's the kind of stuff that people really want to see. It's authentic. I don't care how small or how large your brand is. People don't want to be shown some shiny, overly produced product as much as they want to see just a normal person holding up their phone and showing you behind the scenes.
Got it. Love it. Love it. We talked briefly about hashtags on Instagram. How useful are they on other platforms? I mean, I know they are on Twitter, but what about Facebook and LinkedIn? Because they were kind of late to the party in terms of use of hashtags. Should we use them on Facebook and LinkedIn, and how many? Because I'm assuming we wouldn't use 20 or 30 hashtags on Facebook and LinkedIn, whereas we might on Instagram. Or is that not
Correct.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Correct. So Facebook Facebook, I would say, is the least important for hashtags. There aren't a lot of people searching hashtags on Facebook. It is not the most important place to use hashtags. If you're going to use any, use like one or two, maybe fairly broad ones. So like hashtag vegan, for example, or even hashtag vegan business. But there aren't that many people using hashtags on Facebook, so it's not necessarily worth it. I like to use hashtags on Facebook and Twitter as like ending points to a caption to kind of make a point about something.
Oh,
So,
yes.
so for example, if I'm talking about how dairy cows are treated, I might say, dairy cows are abused. I might do a heartbreak emoji and then hashtag ditch dairy.
Nice. Yeah.
That's using it to make a point, not necessarily using it in a way that using it in like a search engine type way. And so use them on LinkedIn and Facebook's sparingly, and then on Twitter, I actually do recommend not overusing hashtags because people aren't searching them nearly as much as they are on Instagram. Instagram is by far where people are like going to search hashtags. If you do want to use them on Twitter, if you can try and incorporate them into sentences within the caption,
Yes.
that's ideal versus just adding them randomly at the end, which I see a lot of people do.
Got it.
So if you're to say like, the time to go vegan is now, if that's your post, I would much rather see you hashtag the word vegan within the sentence
Yes.
rather than just add hashtag vegan at the end.
Perfect. Now that makes really good sense. That's fantastic. What about links in posts? Because I've seen, again, I think they're quite cool. Obviously, they're millennials doing these. They're quite cool looking social media posts, and they've got a heap of emojis and icons, and then they've got links in the caption text, both on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I've seen them all across. So how useful is that? And how many links is too many? Or is it better to paste those links in the comments of a post instead of the caption? Because I read as well that you could be penalized, say, for putting an external link on LinkedIn. And so it's better to put it in the first comment. So what are your thoughts on links in posts?
Are you talking about
Like an external link. So, like I talk about, watch the full episode of the podcast here, or read the blog post here, and then you put either a bit.ly link or the full link to, say, your a blog post, for example. Or it could be an external link to buy a product as well.
Right. Yeah, so I would limit how many links you're putting on there. Generally, in captions, you want to follow the rule that you want to say as much as possible and as few words as humanly possible.
Right.
And so you don't want to just throw out a bunch of links. The more links you put there, the less people are going to click on them.
Right.
And it's kind of like in life, when we have the more options we have, really the less options we have, the more likely we are to just choose whatever we otherwise would have gone with. So I really recommend not doing an overabundance of links. Sometimes it's important for various reasons. So, for example, maybe within a post of yours on your podcast and your Facebook, it would be important to link to a YouTube video that is heavily referenced within the clip that you're posting, but then also posting a link to the podcast episode. So the case can definitely be made to post more than one link, but in general, whenever possible, limit how many times you're doing that. And last thing I want to mention about links is that I recommend not using bit.ly or shortened links. And the reason being is that people will look at that and not have any clue where it's going, and they don't really trust it. But if they can see, veganbusinessmedia.com, or plantbasednews.org, and then a bunch of whatever comes after that, then they know it's trustworthy and they know what they're going to be getting themselves into by clicking on it.
Oh, that's a fair point, actually. Yeah, it could be a bit tricky on Instagram if you've got really long URLs for a blog post. But I see what you mean about that for the others.
Well, you wouldn't want to post links or URLs in your Instagram posts. I can guarantee basically nobody is looking at Instagram and saying, okay, this episode sounds interesting, or this thing sounds interesting. Let me remember the, bit.ly /L13E4, like people aren't really doing that. And so for links on Instagram, you want to obviously have the swipe up feature if you're doing stories, if you have a 10K followers. But everybody has access to the single link in your URL. So I recommend using that and just saying link in bio. Having people go to there directly.
Okay, fair enough. No, good point. So I know we're getting on to time. There's just a couple more questions I'd love to ask you. Because influencer marketing, there's a lot of information out there on the pros and cons of using influencers to gain traction for your brand. And I think I read recently, I was listening to a podcast actually, and there was a famous story of this woman who had I think she had a couple of million followers, and she partnered with a t-shirt brand. And then when she basically tried to sell the t-shirts to her followers, she couldn't even make 5 sales, and the brand, they had, came to an end, the partnership came to an end. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So what can you tell us about, or your tips on influencer marketing? How helpful and useful is it? And how can vegan brands get it right?
Absolutely. So you want to do your research. You don't want to, so for one, of course, you have to find somebody who fits with your brand. So there might be a random brand out there with 100K followers on Instagram. Then there might be a vegan out there with 10K Instagram followers. And the person with 100K followers, you'd think, okay, they're worth 10 times what the Instagram vegan person is. But if you're promoting a vegan product, I would say the person with 10,000 Instagram followers is more important than the person with 100,000 just general Instagram followers, because it's people who are interested in your niche. And so you really want to do your research and be specific about be particular about who you want to partner with. So also, I would not just look at follower count, I would look at engagement. So I'd see how people are actually engaging, whether they're commenting, or getting a lot of comments, if they're getting a lot of likes. There are a lot of people out there who have purchased followers too. And so if you go to somebody's page, they have 10,000 followers, but they're getting 15, 20 likes on their posts, those followers are fake. And so you definitely want to be mindful of that. And then lastly, I really recommend being specific with what you want from a influencer. A lot of times they might try and just do a story instead of a wall post, but stories will often not get you sales. Wall posts can often be more successful with that. So if you come to an agreement with an influencer, you might want to say, okay, I need you to do 3 stories in one wall, 3 stories in one wall post.
Right.
Just be specific about that, and maybe even ask them to run their caption by you first, because you obviously want them to speak in the way that they would normally speak. That's the only way it's going to work. If it comes off like an advertisement, it's not going to work, and then it's going to fail both of you.
Yeah.
Yes, the influencers got your money in their pocket, but they still come off as fake to their followers, and then nobody's going to buy your things. So it's really mutually beneficial for the influencer to speak in the language that they normally speak in. But on this note, there might be something that you really want them to include that they might not include on their own. And so ask them to run the caption or run the story by you first. And that could be part of the agreement. And I think that's the best way to approach influencer marketing.
Oh, that's great. Any ideas, any tips on, but like, I know they're kind of ballpark figures, but how to budget for those? Like, are there any kind of standard rates for, say, a post or a story, just to give people a kind of rough idea of what they might be looking to spend? And I know it's going to vary on how big the following is and what have you, but are there any kind of ballpark figures you can give us to give businesses an idea about what they might need to spend, or at least a minimum of what they might need to spend?
Yeah. So for Instagram, for example, for every 10,000 followers, that's $100 for a post.
Right. Okay.
So if somebody has 20,000 followers, you probably want to offer them $200. But again, don't just do this blindly and say, okay, they have 30K followers. Sounds good. Let me DM them. Look at the engagement. Look at the kinds of posts that they're doing. If it's something that fits with their brand, if somebody posts nothing but activism photos, them at protests and them maybe doing undercover investigations, they might not be the best. If you have some like vegan luxury clothing company, they might not be the best person to reach out to, even if they have the right number of followers and the right audience, because that is not something that blends well with the kind of content that they're pushing out there. So you want to obviously choose influencers who are perfect for you, and that might even mean you have to pay a little bit more if you want to find just the right person, but that could be money well worth spending.
Got it. We touched on followers, and you mentioned buying of followers. And I think there was a report that said at least, or most of the celebrities, like with their millions of followers on social media accounts, at least half of them are bought followers or bots or fake followers. One argument is, particularly if you're starting out, buy a bunch of followers so that you look popular, and that will help you to get real followers. But obviously there's been a clamp down on this, and it's not, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, and how vegan brands, particularly those who are starting out, but also established brands, how can they increase their rate of followers? And obviously they want relevant followers rather than a bunch of people or bots that are not that helpful. What are your thoughts on ethical ethical follower strategies?
Well, for one, from what I understand, it is impossible now to buy followers, or like practically impossible. And if you do it, I think it comes with a lot of risk. So I would really recommend against doing this at all costs. So I definitely recommend not purchasing followers. And the nice thing is, though, again, this community who's listening to this podcast, you have a product or you're in a business with people who care about this. People care about veganism. They care about vegan products. They care about animals. And so we have the ability to grow our pages organically by focusing on uh, or by strategizing and focusing on pushing out content that is going to get a lot of engagement and reach, which is then in turn going to build the brand. So really focus on building organically. And that is mostly done through, on Twitter and Facebook especially, through shares. And so you want to be pushing content that is going to get shared. Make your content as shareable as possible. When you're typing up the caption for a post, ask yourself, if I was the audience and I saw this in my newsfeed, how could it be written in a way, how could this caption be written in a way that is going to increase the odds of me sharing this? And so you always want to make your content as shareable as possible. And then of course, just pushing out good relevant content. If the content you're pushing out is weird, out of touch, uninteresting, boring, the same stuff all the time, or radically inconsistent, erratic, there's a good chance people aren't going to be engaging with your page on a regular basis. So you really want to enter into this with a strategy in mind.
Got it. What about those things with automate? Like there's automated things like bots that seem to put random comments on posts and things, or they'll follow you, and then if you don't follow back after a little while, they unfollow, but it's all automated. Do you recommend those or stay away from them?
Stay away from them.
Okay.
People can smell a bot from a mile away.
Yeah, I know I can. When someone posts on my Instagram, awesome feed, keep it up. And I'm just like, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, no human in their right mind would even write that. It's always written in weird ways too. Yeah. Or there's like 3 random emojis together.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen some really inappropriate ones too. Like, people posting about like, a funeral they just went to, and then like somebody's like, yeah, great work or something.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, that's a really awful one, isn't it?
Definitely avoid that.
Oh, that's great. First, very quickly before we wrap up then, so times to post on social media. I know there's lots of views on this. Are there any kind of right times of day to post on social media? And also, how often should we be posting? Should we be posting daily, twice daily, once a week?
So you want to look at the insights for the platform that you're interested in. So Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook all offer the details as for when your audience is most active. And for me, it seems to be pretty consistent, with a little bit of change here and there. But it seems to be pretty consistent that between 12 and 3 is when, and 12 and 3 in my current time zone. Which is the East Coast of the U.S. That is when they tend to be most active. And for that reason, I want to get my posts out right before the peak, and or right before it starts peaking. And that way, because the lifespan of posts is very short. So, generally only a few hours, your posts are really going to be showing up in news feeds before it starts showing up in far fewer news feeds. And so, you want to post at the most optimal time, which is right before this peak. So if my audience is most active between 12 and 3, I'll probably throw my post up there at about 11:45 or noon. And this will change depending on your audience and where you are in the world. I know that in Australia, it gets kind of confusing because Australia is a small country in terms of population, and the vegan community and stuff is like far, mostly in Europe and in North America. So I can see how that might mix things up a little bit. So you might be scheduling posts to go up at 2 a.m. But just pay attention to when your audience is active and do accordingly. And again, that's why, using tools like Buffer where you can schedule posts, make your life a lot easier.
Yeah. What do you think about resharing a post? So once you've sent it out, because I've seen like vegan non-profit organizations do this, say on Twitter, for example, where you'll see a post and then maybe a few hours later you see it again. And then maybe the following day or a couple of days later, it's the same post again. So what are your thoughts on resharing the same post?
Yeah, so on Twitter, there is this pretty cool hack, I like to call it, a Twitter hack, where you can retweet your own tweet. And every time you do that, it shows back up in the news feeds, top of the news feeds of your followers.
Right.
And so if you do this 3 times over the course of your day, your post is going to get 4 times as much engagement as it otherwise would if you just posted it once. Because every time you do it, it's like a fresh new post. So I actually do think it's a pretty good good tool to use on Twitter, retweeting, and then a few hours later undoing that retweet and then retweeting it again, and then just continuing this process for a few hours or a few times over the course of the day. You're going to get more engagement on it. Instagram doesn't offer this kind of flexibility or ability, but Facebook. Also, you really can't do that same sort of like retweet type thing. You can share it as a, reshare your old post as a post, but it's not really going to add to the engagement of the original post. And so for that reason, I would rather just, a few days or a week or 2 later, maybe just do a whole brand new post with that same content.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. Just before we talk about your services and what you offer, the final kind of general social media question. We've talked about Buffer. What are your top maybe 2, 3, or whatever recommendations for must-have tools or apps for social media marketing? Because I know there's heaps out there. There's Canva, there's Lumen 5, and a whole bunch in between. And I know personally as well, it can be easy to get carried away with, the shiny object syndrome. Like, oh, I must have that. But which ones would you say are really helpful? Perhaps, kind of essential ones.
Yeah, well, I would definitely say that Buffer is the number one best tool you want to have. So you can schedule posts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So I think that is really great. The Google Suite might sound super simple, but like having access to spreadsheets and documents, and like this will definitely play a role in the social media too. When it comes to like engage, working with other companies and brands and individuals, using other tools, graphic design. I think Canva is great. You go to Photopea, so PHOTOPEA.com. It's like online Photoshop, so it's free. That's pretty great. Yeah, I would say that those are pretty good tools. And then there's some tools that I use for videos on social. I use an app called Meta Meme. So that's basically making meme videos. So videos like the bars on the top and the bottom. I really like that one. Video crop. So with video crop, you basically just crop out bits of the video so that it looks it looks more relevant and whatever you want. Those are some of my favorites. Also, InstaSize. InstaSize will reformat the dimensions of your photo, and so like for example, if you're trying to upload a pretty tall photo to Instagram, but it's outside the dimensions that you want, you could use an app like InstaSize, which will add solid bars to the sides of the photo, which would then make it you'd actually put the whole get all that same content that you wanted, but with the bars on the side.
Got it. Oh my goodness. Now I'm getting my shiny object syndrome again. I'm thinking, oh, I must get that one. No, that's brilliant. That's been so helpful, John. You're obviously an absolute expert in your field. So you've consulted, as we've mentioned, with some non-profits, with $1 Million Vegan Campaign, which I was part of as the Australia campaign manager for the first campaign, Plant-Based News, Veganuary, and others. So tell us a bit about what kind of help you offer business owners. So do you consult and do strategy? Do you offer a done-for-you service? Tell us a bit about if people want to connect with you and to hire you, what do you offer?
Absolutely. So I do offer a variety of services within my Patreon. So if you were to go to patreon.com/John Oberg, you could find a variety of social media resources within the Patreon. And so I'm always looking to get new patrons to become part of my community that is working to make a big difference for animals. But as for paid client services, through my LLC, I offer social media consulting, and it could be anywhere from 1 hour a month to 5 hours a week, whatever works with you and your brand. I'm open to exploring with you, and we can talk about all different areas of social media, working on strategy together, working on best practices, the do's and don'ts. I can conduct reviews of your social media pages, provide recommendations. I can even potentially find staff for you if that's somebody you're looking for, especially if you want to find people within the vegan community. I am certainly open to helping out in that realm as well.
Nice. I love it. Now, John, you've been so generous with your time and your expertise. I know this episode is a little longer than usual, but we managed to unpack a lot of really useful information. I think people are going to get such good value from this. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share lots of tips and strategies for us and, helping us to improve our social media. I know I've personally learned a lot as well. So thank you so much for being on the show, John.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and I thank your audience for listening and hearing us out, and I look forward to hopefully working with some great members of your audience. Keep up the great work, Katrina.
So that was John Oberg, vegan social media marketing expert and influencer. You can find out more at johnoberg.org. And that link is on the show notes page at veganbusinessmedia.com/podcasts and going to episode 126. Now for some vegan business news highlights. A vegan tennis brand has just launched. That's July 2019 if you're listening in the future, selling wool-free tennis balls. Sheeps is an online retailer founded by Danny Rosenthal, a passionate tennis player and vegan of 26 years. According to Rosenthal, more than 360 million tennis balls are produced annually. After discovering that most of them contain wool and many tennis sneakers, even those without leather, contain animal products, he started the company to initially sell the few versions of wool-free tennis balls currently available, as well as other animal-free and environmentally friendly tennis products such as sneakers, racket strings, and Sheeps branded apparel. Rosenthal's future plans include independently producing and selling wool-free tennis balls, developing an upgraded and optimal tennis ball that's vegan and sustainable, and creating and selling animal-free products for other sports. I love this. I used to play tennis when I was younger, and I enjoy watching Wimbledon in particular. So it's great to see this vegan business raising awareness of the cruelty involved in wool and providing alternatives. Fantastic. In its first 15 months since launch, Vegan Fine Foods supermarket and cafe in Fort Lauderdale, Florida in the US, which stocks more than 4,000 products, has turned over an impressive $1.2 million, serving more than 35,000 customers, of whom around 75% are not vegan. Now, founder Stephen Smith, a former PepsiCo and Procter & Gamble executive turned business professor, has ambitious plans to expand the brand through franchising, along with the launch of an online store and private label products. He's aiming to create an all-vegan equivalent of Whole Foods. Dr. Smith, who's been vegan since 1997, has launched an equity crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder to raise additional capital for the expansion. Equity crowdfunding allows members of the public, not just registered investors, to invest in small businesses in their early stages. Now, what I love about this is that it goes to show that an all-vegan market and cafe can thrive in an area that's not traditionally known for being vegan-friendly, and that non-vegans, or pre-vegans as I like to call them, are keen to buy plant-based products. Now, full disclosure, Vegan Fine Foods is my client. I'm doing some PR work for them to generate buzz around the WeFunder campaign, which at the time of this episode has so far raised just over $85,000 from 149 investors, which is pretty exciting. Franchise options include the entire Vegan Fine Foods market, Vegan Fine Cafe only, and Vegan Fine Body, which is health and beauty products only. Dr. Smith, who aims to be preparing an IPO with over 100 national franchises by 2024, believes this flexible and diverse approach will appeal to a much larger group of people who want to run their own vegan business. He says, "We also believe each option is different enough from the others that it will tap into different market niches and not cannibalize sales from each other if they happen to be in the same geographic market." And you can find a link to the WeFunder equity crowdfunding campaign on the show notes page for this episode. So that's it for this episode of Vegan Business Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a review and rating on iTunes or any other platform you're listening on. Finally, I encourage you to head over to veganbusinessmedia.com, where you can find more free resources as well as details of how we can work together to help you grow your vegan business. I'm Katrina Fox, author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. And I look forward to catching up with you in the next episode of Vegan Business Talk. Bye for now.